All right. So let's go ahead and kick it off. It's good to have you guys here, and if anybody else pops in, we'll definitely make sure that we let them in here quickly. And it's good to see all your faces. So does anybody else miss being around people as much as I do? Yeah, for sure. Well, let's do some quick introductions, and then we'll get underway. I'm Kevin Carr, and I'm kind of our I guess Phil Donahue for today, just kind of leading us through the discussion. Now, y'all probably, some of you might not know who Phil Donahue is. If not, he was before Oprah, and so
way before.
Yeah, way before, even before Sally Jesse, I think. But we are just going to spend some time today talking about what's a really important issue. It's one of those things I think right now that's kind of bubbling and boiling below the surface, and we haven't necessarily seen too much of it emerge. But I think that it's probably, like the Boy Scouts, it's good to be prepared. And so you all may be at a certain level familiar with Sheltering Wings. We're a domestic violence shelter, and we serve men and women and children who have experienced domestic violence. We offer safe emergency housing for residents. Right now, I think we're at about 52 residents in our facility. We offer life skills training for those residents to redeem the time that they're with us and to set them up to break out of the cycle of domestic violence. We do lots of prevention and education work in the community and at churches and workplaces, and that's Melissa's forte. I'll let her introduce herself here in a second. And we do a lot of work with children as well in our facility to help them, as we know that children are so much more likely to enter into abusive relationships in the future when they haven't had the opportunity to break out of the cycles they've seen when they've grown up. So, and of course, we do that all in the name and for the sake of Christ. We want everybody in our community to be safe and to be healthy, and so that's really what motivates our work. So my name's Kevin Carr. I'm one of the more recent staff additions here at Sheltering Wings. I'm responsible for our communications efforts and our relationships with churches, and so it's a real privilege to be able to serve Sheltering Wings. I've known about the organization really since Sheltering Wings launched way back in the early 2000s. I served on the board for about 18 months and then joined the staff last summer. So it's been a great place to be involved, and we really just couldn't do what we do without our church connections and the relationships we have with all of you. And so we're appreciative of that. So Melissa, you want to say hey and introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name is Melissa Eckert, and I am the Prevention Education Officer here at Sheltering Wings. And so my role is to do things just like this, to share the education and the knowledge that we have about domestic violence, how it impacts our community, how it impacts those we serve, and share that information. And like Kevin said, I do that on a variety of different platforms, businesses, helping people understand how domestic violence impacts the workplace, from their employees, their staff, as a safety issue, for churches, to help people understand that, a lot of times that's where a victim will go to reach out for help is through their congregation and their church. And so preparing lay leaders, pastors, volunteers to be able to recognize it and respond to it when someone is experiencing abuse. And then as well as a prevention piece, a large part of what I do is in the schools for our county, middle schools and high schools, sharing with our students in health classes about healthy relationships, what those look like, what it looks like when it becomes unhealthy, and how they can hopefully keep their relationships healthy. And then knowing that they're not alone if something does happen, there are resources out there for them as well, not just adults. So that's really what I do. I've been with Sheltering Wings for 6 years now. Actually, it'll be 7 years this August. And I, much like Kevin, have known about Sheltering Wings a long time since I moved here, about 15 years ago, was one of the first organizations I learned about for my community, because I just have a passion for folks who are in hardship situations like this. I want to be able to help and guide them, as well as our community, to be able to understand and serve them.
Yeah, so we really want to have a conversation. You guys have a lot of pooled experience and wisdom, and some of you may not be very familiar with one another, and we want to give you a chance to interact and get to know each other too. So we thought we'd do this a little bit around robin style. I'll call out names if you want to just let us know who you are and maybe one takeaway or question, takeaway you hope to walk away with, or a question that you have. And that'll just give us a chance to kind of level set and make sure that we address everything that's really helpful today. So we have an agenda, but it may not be the most helpful agenda, and we want to make sure that it's the most helpful for everybody. And then I want to ask too, there's a chat feature here in our in Zoom. If you've spent as much time in Zoom as us, this is completely redundant. I may jot down some notes and pop them into there. If you guys have questions along the way, please feel free to put those in there. But if you could, it would be really helpful for me, as you get the chance to introduce yourself, if you could just type over there what organization you work with. And that would be just helpful for us to know kind of what our reach is for this, and to be able to follow up as well with you guys. And so I appreciate that. But again, let us know your name and then one takeaway or question you hope to walk away with today or to have answered. So let's start with Michelle, because you're next on my screen. So do you mind?
Thanks. Good. I guess it's still good morning. Hi, I'm Michelle Knight. I'm a United Methodist pastor. And right now my season of ministry is I'm an associate superintendent, which is a fancy word to say I supervise over 40 pastors in 6 different counties, including Hendricks County. And I enjoy that ministry, and it's a challenge in different ways because of COVID sheltering in. But what I am trying to do is resource for my pastors. And so one of my questions for today is, I know in a regular time of world how to look for signs of abuse with someone, but since we're in a different time of world, I would like to hear some questions to ask or signs to look for so that I can help equip pastors if they need to route a church member to a safe place and how to find that safe place during the midst of sheltering in. So I am so grateful this popped up. This topic was on my radar before this came up. Alex Hershey is a colleague and he sent me the link. And so yay, I was super, super excited to know you were on this. And so it's just not me. I'm representing like 110 churches. So,
Wow.
So fill me up with resources and I will try to disseminate them as pastors may need them, because this is more significant than I think we realize.
Yeah, I think you're right, Michelle, and we'll definitely do the best we can, and we want to be a resource first and foremost for you guys. So appreciate Alex for hooking you up with us. Why don't we do next with Delia? Would you let us know a little bit about yourself?
Well, I think I'm out of county here, but I didn't know where you guys were exactly from. But my name is Delia Murillo, and I work for the Public Defenders in Elkhart County as a client advocate. So what I normally do is I follow up with clients depending on their situations. Usually I work with chins in the juvenile courts, and working with DCS in regards to putting in place services that these families might need. And if there are cases that come, domestic violence is one that comes across our table in regards to parents and how it's affecting their children.
Delia, we have really great partnerships with the Public Defender's Office here in Hendricks County, and we don't, I should have mentioned this, we don't just serve Hendricks County. At about any given time, only half of our residents are from Hendricks County. So we truly are a regional organization, and we serve a lot of clients from Marion County, from all the counties really that surround us. And so we're really glad to have you here. These resources are I think, location unspecific. So we're glad that you're here with us. So Sherry, would you go next? Tell us a little bit about yourself and about what you hope to take away or what questions you have.
Yes, my name is Sherry Branham. I'm on staff at Traders Point Christian Church at the Northwest Campus. I'm over women's groups there, and also do a lot of pastoral counseling to women. And I just want to tune in and hear what y'all have to say. And I'm very familiar with the situation of domestic violence and abuse, and just what you recommend during this COVID pandemic.
Great. Brenda, would you go ahead and go next?
Hi, I'm Brenda Hessel, and I am also with Traders Point Christian Church, but I'm just a volunteer.
Not just.
Well, I work specifically under Jenny in the care department. So I field calls, emails, personal meetings with anybody that reaches out to us. And I'm also a former advocate at Sheltering Wings. I worked there for 8 years.
Thank you, Brenda. So you're familiar with us. So
I'm very familiar.
Yeah, if I have any questions, you can just chime right in. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I still have some ties there, so.
That's great. All right, Steve Bolin, can you say hey? Let us know what questions you have or if you're looking for any specific takeaways.
Hi, my name's Steve. I am a pastor on the southwest side of Indianapolis, a church plant that's just getting going down there. And I am a huge fan of Sean Tully, who's there. And, but also really looking for resources as well. How do we spot this sort of thing in this time? What are the best steps? How do we make sure that we love our people well, particularly those who may be in bad situations? So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks, Steve. Kathy, can you go next?
Hello, everyone. My name is Kathy Anderson. I'm from the YWCA Greater Harrisburg area in Pennsylvania. Basically, I am a prevention educator, and when I'm not doing that, I'm heavily involved with the crisis intervention advocacy part. And my takeaway would be just to improve my outreach efforts to various religious organizations, given that there are intersections involving religious backgrounds as well regarding the victims, survivors of domestic violence.
Awesome. Well, you get the prize for the longest commute so far. So thanks for joining us today. Appreciate you. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Yeah. Riley, you're up next.
Great. I am Riley Weaver. I'm the missions minister at Plainfield Christian Church. We're big fans of Sheltering Wings, and I'm here today really just to take notes for other people. I want to share what I learned today with our staff, and then we also have a missionary overseas right now who's dealing with some situations similar to what we're going to talk about today. So I want to be able to resource her as well.
Absolutely. Thanks, Riley. It's good to have you. Nice to see you too. Jenny, will you go next?
Yes, good morning. I'm Jenny Braun. I'm also with Traders Point Christian Church. And one specific question I'm hoping we might get some information on today is your Thursday night group for survivors. I think I saw an email recently that during this time of stay at home, the group was only for residents. I just wondered if there was any change in that or what other similar resources might be available during this time.
Yeah, that's a great question, Jenny. We'll make sure we mention Embracing Empowerment before we wrap up today.
Thanks.
All right, Sean.
I'm Sean Tully. I'm the lead pastor at Dover Christian Church, which is about 7 miles west of Lebanon, and I'm married to a licensed marriage and family therapist who is doing telehealth for the school that she works with also in Lebanon. And just kind of curious, I think mainly in how do you detect or identify when someone might be a victim of abuse in the home, especially during the quarantine? And also, how do you break the ice in approaching that with them? How do you find out and ask, maybe indirectly or directly, if that might be going on?
All right. Thanks, Sean. We'll definitely cover those things. Next, I'm going to struggle with your name here because what I'm seeing on the screen is Huawei, I think. So let us know about yourself. There, I think I see your username as HUAWEI. Can you let us know a little bit about yourself and what you hope to carry away, if you can hear us? All right, well, we'll skip forward. to Vincia.
Yes, good morning. My name is Vincia Mitchell, and I'm a domestic violence counselor at Hope Roads, which is located in Brooklyn, New York. So I'm doing ongoing supportive services to survivors of domestic violence.
Great. I think I heard you say you're in New York.
Yes.
Great. Well, thanks for, how'd you find out about us?
So I was on Eventbrite searching for different events on domestic violence. So I was like, oh, I'll just give you guys a try and see what I can learn.
Well, great. I hope that's a help. And thanks for joining us. All right. Now, Addie.
You're welcome.
Good morning, everyone. I am from Minnesota, actually, and I found out on Eventbrite as well. I am a domestic violence and sexual violence or assault victim advocate in southern Minnesota here. And I just hope to find out a little bit more what we can do for outreach, since we are basically quarantined. Today is our first day at home. So what I can do to reach out to other victims, and survivors and some of the staff working with them.
Yeah, well, welcome home. It's kind of nice here.
It's a challenge.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and thanks for joining us. I'm glad you found us. And
you.
one more attendee, I'm seeing M. Rangel.
Yes, hi, my name is Miriam Rangel. Sorry, my full name was not on there.
That's all right.
But I'm also with Traders Point Christian Church. I work with Jenny Braun in the care department. I'm a leadership resident, so I'm just here to just keep learning about domestic violence and sheltering wings. So just here to listen and learn.
Fantastic. Well, we love residents, and you guys have a great program up there. So it's a great opportunity for you to hopefully broaden your perspective just a little bit, which is what that's all about, isn't it? So it's great to have you guys. We jotted down some notes while we were going. Melissa is the expert here, so we're really going to let her kind of take it and run. We're gonna follow up with several things too, and hopefully they'll be helpful and provide a little bit more information for you. But as I was thinking through how we can help churches and other organizations take care of people in our churches, really the text that popped out to me as really I think one of the more important texts for us to think about as church leaders in this time comes from Acts 20, verses 27 through 28. Paul talking to the Ephesian elders as he's saying goodbye to them and getting ready to sail on to Jerusalem. He talks about this. He says, keep watch over yourselves in the flock of which the Holy Spirit has made you overseers. Be shepherds of the flock, be shepherds of the church of God, which he bought with his own blood. Know that after I leave, savage wolves will come in among you and will not spare the flock. While we're called to help these sheep, I realize that not all of us are equipped to do so. We want to do our best to protect the sheep that are in our fold. We want to make sure that enemies stay away, that they're not hurt or abused. And so the issue is just how do we do that? And we want to make sure to do it. And why talk about it now? Why now? And several of you alluded to this, but really the risk of occurrence of domestic violence right now is sky high. And the risk of severity right now, I think, is sky high as well, just simply because of the proximity we're all forced into. So we want to make sure that we can do our best to help spot signs, to help respond, to protect these victims and their kids as well during this period that's really, I think, unprecedented for all of us. So I want to turn it over to Melissa, and she's going to take it from here. If you guys want, you can use the raise hand feature. You can use the chat to ask for clarification or whatever. Or just unmute yourself and jump in. We want this to be a discussion. So again, we're grateful for all of you being here. And Melissa, you can take it from here.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you're all with us today, and I really do hope that we are able to address all the questions and thoughts that you might have in regards to helping victims while we are sheltering in place, as it provides some new challenges. I'm going to share my screen because I have some slides to show you guys that will hopefully help. And then I also have some information. I don't know if you've got a pencil handy, you may want to jot down, or like Kevin said, we will be sending some follow-up information out as well. So I'm going to share my screen here, make sure everyone can see it. Is that good? Is everyone able to see the screen? Perfect. Okay. So what I want to start with is we never want to assume that people know about domestic violence or know what domestic violence is. So we, just give a basic definition of domestic violence. It can also be referred to as intimate partner violence, domestic abuse, relationship abuse, but it is a pattern of behavior that's used by one partner to control, maintain power and control over their other partner in the relationship. It takes on many forms, may include any combination of physical, sexual, psychological, emotional, financial, or even spiritual abuse. It's not always physical. I think that's a common misconception that people think, oh, I'll know because I'll see these physical signs of abuse, but that's not always the case. And then the biggest thing to understand and know is that when someone is experiencing abuse, it will result in them changing how they behave in the relationship in a response to the abuse. They stop spending time with their friends or family because their partner is jealous of them or makes claims about their family and friends. They stop, saying how they feel, or they stop doing the things, that makes them who they are because to please their partner, that result in the change of behavior. We know how big the impact is because we see it here every day, but statistically 1 in every 7 men and 1 in every 4 women will experience intimate partner violence during their lifetime. And more than 1 million Americans report a violent assault by an intimate partner each year. So the numbers are huge. 85% of reported cases do come from women. Not saying that it doesn't happen to men, it does. We serve men here, and so we know that it's an issue for men too. It's just there are certain societal barriers that have, society has told men, it's not okay for them to experience abuse, or they're not a real man, or, different barriers that keep men from coming forward. And we work daily to hopefully break down those barriers for men so that they can be able to get the resources they need as well. I did just see a statistic that since March 16th, the National Domestic Violence Hotline has received over 2,000 calls in which COVID-19 was cited as a condition of abuse. And we'll kind of talk about that in a little bit, about what those, how someone might be using coronavirus or COVID-19 as a mechanism for the abuse, or how that might look. But that is not only are they seeing an increase in calls, they're seeing an increase in calls where that is the reasoning behind it. How does it impact the church? Domestic violence victims are definitely more likely to disclose the abuse that they're experiencing to someone in their faith community than they are to seek help from law enforcement, or maybe even reach out to an organization like ours because they feel comfortable in their congregations. They have created personal relationships there that the level of trust has already been established. And so it's there's a little bit more of a comfort level reaching out to their church leader for that assistance. 84% of pastors have counseled more than 6 victims of abuse. So we know that they're helping those victims, and we want to equip them so that they are able to do that to the best of their ability. 30% of domestic violence victims are affiliated with the church, so we know that it happens in the church too. It's not just to a certain social class or a certain group of people that it happens to. And then 81% of pastors say they would take more action to reduce domestic violence if they had more training. If they know what to say, what to do, how to respond, we want to be able to equip them to do that and walk alongside them in that process. They don't have to do it alone. We're there to help them every step of the way. One of the things that is important to understand, especially right now, is the cycle of violence. There is a way that violence happens in a relationship, and this is especially beneficial to understand now, as victims are stuck at home, they're more likely experiencing this cycle more regularly or even possibly more frequently because there isn't that break. The buildup or the tension building phase, that was we may call it, you may hear it referred to, is growing. There may be more outbursts or explosions that happen because there's not that break because they're constantly together. So knowing that there's this constant buildup or there's these explosions that are happening more frequently, is good to understand, because we don't have there's no escape for them right now. They can't just, go to work and get a break. They can't, they're not going to church and getting a break because they're with their partner every single day. So that buildup or that tension is getting bigger, and the explosions of behavior may happen more often. After the explosion of behavior, though, comes the remorse and what we call the honeymoon phase, where they are apologetic, they make excuses for their behavior, things like that. A lot of excuses that I imagine are being put out there right now is, I'm just so stressed. We're out of work. We don't know when our next, where, our next paycheck is coming in. We're out of food. The kids are home. They're driving me crazy. Everyone's on edge. That's just everybody's house. Right now, now you throw into the mix that their partner is abusive and controlling, and those reasonings that they're giving their partner for why it's happening may actually seem normal to the victim who's experiencing them, because lots of people have the same complaints. This is what we're going through. We don't know, what to do next. We don't know what is coming next. And so everybody's on edge at your house. That's not uncommon, but it may feel like to a victim that it's justifiable. And it's not, because even when we are on edge and we have stress, it's no reason to take it out on the people that we live with. We have to have better coping skills than that when we do have those times of stress. And abusive people, abusive behavior is a choice that they are making. So that's something that we have to remember, is that even though everyone's on edge and everyone's stressed, there is a difference, because the abusive people are choosing that behavior versus someone who is in a stress situation, is just reacting to their environment currently. I think, oops, wrong way. One of the things that people want to know and is important to know is, like, what are we looking for? These are just some common signs of domestic violence. These aren't any different than any other time of the year when we may be able to interact with people on a regular basis. These are the things that you might see. They act differently than normal. They're withdrawing from their activities. Well, everyone's withdrawing from their activities, so how do you tell? They become quieter, withdrawn around their partner. They defer to their partner who may speak for them. They avoid certain topics or social commitments to please their partner. They go along with everything their partner says. The mention or making excuses for their partner's behavior, I would say that's probably especially high right now. Having limited access to money or the bank accounts, especially because funds may be limited right now, and so their abuser may be using that as an excuse as well. We don't have the money to do that, or we can't. You can't go to the store and buy these things. You're not allowed to do that because money is an issue, or money is tight right now. And then obviously demonstrating low self-esteem. They become, maybe they used to be confident, but now they are questioning their worth or value, and then they may become depressed, anxious, or suicidal. These, like I said, will be harder to see while we are socially isolating, especially since isolation is one of the primary tactics that an abuser already uses, is isolation. And so this makes that isolation even greater and bigger, because what would have been a way to reach out to someone they were close to or escape the abuse is gone. They're not working, they're working from home, they're not going to church, they're not spending time with friends or family. They aren't even able to go see their parents because of everything that's happening in the social isolation. Some of the tactics that someone may be using to using coronavirus as a tactic to assert that control are things like, they're withholding necessary items like hand sanitizer, disinfectants that would be helpful to the victim in staying healthy. And we might not know that because we're not with them, but if you, happen to know that, or you talk to someone and they're like, we just don't have any cleaning supplies, or I, don't have any hand sanitizer, we don't have masks. Those are all things that maybe, just take a small bag and put it on someone's porch who's saying they don't have those things. That's just, a great thing to do for someone who doesn't have those things anyways, but those may be withheld from someone who needs them. Sharing misinformation about the coronavirus pandemic to control or frighten their partner, especially to prevent them from seeking appropriate medical attention if they do have symptoms like, oh, it's just a cough, it's just allergies, you're fine. They're using that as a form of controlling their partner. You're fine. You just isolate, you just stay in your room. We'll be fine. You go here and, everyone else will be fine. You quarantine. They're using that to further isolate their partner. Withholding insurance cards, threatening to cancel insurance, preventing them from seeking medical attention. And then one that I thought was really interesting is that, for someone who is abusive, the independence of their partner is a threat. And so they may make it difficult for them to work at home. They may, withhold the internet so that they aren't able to work. And then they become more financially dependent because they get laid off or they aren't reporting for work, so then they lose their job. Healthcare workers may be kept from working, like, you can't go to work, you're going to put our whole family at risk if you go out there and work. And so they're controlling the independence that their partner may have by doing that. And so that using that social distancing as a way to justify what they're doing and how they're behaving. Let me see here. So some of the other signs that you might be able to recognize is, if someone was normally committed to being, checking in with their, accountability partner, or a Bible study, or even with some, a friend down the street, and they're not checking in with them, it's really big that we check on the people in our community right now, whether that is, our neighbors, our family members, students, teachers should be checking on students, as congregation leaders. That's kind of hard because now we don't know who's coming to our Sunday services online, because maybe your church doesn't have the ability to have that check-in online. Maybe they do, and if it does and you're not seeing someone who is normally there, like, that'd be a great opportunity to check in, reach out to see, where are they? Why haven't, we haven't heard from, this. And for mega churches or big churches, that's going to be an even bigger challenge because, you may not know who's at your Sunday services every day. And that's where it's going to come in handy to utilize your small group leaders, your care ministries, your small group Bible studies, women's studies, men's studies, to be checking in with the congregation as a whole. And just asking, has anybody heard from so-and-so? Has anybody checked in with this person? Especially if it's someone who maybe someone in your ministry was counseling before, but you haven't heard from. These are key opportunities to be checking in on those people. So, go the wrong way every time. So how to help someone? Obviously, when we are connected and we are congregating together, it's going to be a little bit easier to see it, for one, and then address it. You know, if you suspect someone is experiencing it in your church and you see them regularly, it's going to be a little bit easier to reach out to them. So how to help during this time is not going to be much different than, you know, how to help them and when we are together. It's just now we have to be more creative about it. The first and foremost is we want to be an ally to everyone. We want them to know that we are here and that, you know, no one is alone during this time. So let them know that whenever you do talk to them, you know, like, hey, I'm not judging you for your situation. Things are kind of crazy here for me too, but I just want to support you. I want to help you. Is there anything you want to talk about? Is there anything I can help you or support you in, you know, this way? You know, those things like that. Let them, you know, obviously let them know you're not going to judge them. Express your concern for their safety. Don't be afraid to let someone know that you're worried about them. Or that you are scared about what might happen, or helping them recognize that the situation that they are in may not be healthy. It may not be a good situation to be in. So, you know, just saying, you know, even though times are stressful, you know, we should still be treating one another with respect. We should still be, you know, expressing our care and concern and love for each other, not misusing the power and control that someone may have over someone else. I would say though, avoid confrontation, because if they're not ready to talk about it, it's not going to help. They have to be willing to share that it's happening to them. And until they are ready to share, the biggest thing we can do is just be there. Just check in with them, just support them, and help let them know that they're not alone. They have to be able to make that decision on their own. And then again, ask them how you can support them. You know, some tactical ways that you can offer that support, you know, help them brainstorm ways for self-care. You know, is it possible for you to get 15 minutes by yourself? You know, is it possible for you to go outside and sit on the back porch? You know, maybe if you take the kids to do a quiet activity, you know, just different things that they can do that will hopefully provide them some self-care in the process, and then maybe puts a little bit of distance between them and their partner. I would say, you know, outside is good because A, they're not going to be trapped in one place. So if they're able to sit on their front porch or their back porch, and you know, noise travels. So if their partner starts yelling at them while they're sitting outside on the back porch, guess who might hear? Their next door neighbor who's outside also. So outside is a good place, and hopefully the weather is more cooperative in these coming days, and that we're able to be outside more. So I would say that is definitely for sure a way to offer them that not safety as much, but a step out of the intense environment that might be inside the home. Just stop, maybe you should stop by for a welfare check. Socially distance, of course, you know, go up, ring the doorbell, and then step back to the driveway and say, hey, I was just in the neighborhood, just wanted to stop by, see how everyone at your house is. You know, we're getting really, really creative when it comes to connecting in person, but still socially distancing. You know, I've seen all kinds of people do it. So, you know, just, you know, be creative. If it's someone in your neighborhood, you know, take a walk and walk by their house. You know, if it's somebody who you may have been counseling before or someone who you're worried about, you know, have that quick welfare check of just driving by, stopping by, letting them know that you're still aware. But then that also lets the abusive person know someone's checking in. So I can't just be, you know, going crazy. You know, I have to maybe be a little more accountable for their actions because they never know when someone might stop by. Obviously, where it's appropriate, and we'll talk about this a little more, addressing the abusive partner. I'm going to pause on what I was going to say, but there. Host a virtual book club. You know, maybe they are not able to normally come to Bible study or book clubs, you know, but maybe now that their partner might not see it as such a threat that they're leaving the home, but they're still connecting with people. Zoom gives us an insight into something that is happening in someone else's home. So maybe, you know, invite them to be a part of a Bible study or a book study, or even just a weekly check-in. You know, like, this is our weekly check-in. We're going to see how everybody's doing, you know, and I invite you to be a part of that, because those check-ins, again, give us a glimpse into what's happening to them. Let me see. If someone is not, we kind of talked about that. I want to talk about assessing the level of risk. We have some questions that we ask when someone calls here that kind of allows us to know what the level of risk that they might be at. Like, do they have a weapon in the home? Have they threatened violence before? Things like that, that would say that someone was at a higher level of risk. And it's kind of hard. You wouldn't want to just obviously start out the door with, oh, how are things going? Great. Does your husband or wife have a weapon? You know, like, you wouldn't start out with that, obviously, but you want to be able to know how to ask those right kinds of questions in a way that is helpful for them. And I will say, if you are able to connect with someone who's experiencing abuse and you're able to ask questions, it's important to ask yes or no questions, because you never know when their partner might be in the same room with them, but a yes or no question is very easy for them to answer. So that is helpful when you can kind of prepare ahead of time a list of questions that are yes or no type of questions. And I will say it would be beneficial to prepare for that maybe ahead of time. Thinking of other, I already talked about thinking of other ways to digitally connect, but I will say too, if they can't do Zoom because their partner is right there or checks in, you know, direct messaging through Facebook or different apps that other people use. You may be friends with them on, you know, Facebook, so can you send them a direct message? That might be an avenue that their partner is not overseeing or checking. We get direct messages here at the shelter a lot of times because people can't pick up the phone and just call someone and say, this is what I need or I'm in danger. But through a direct message, through some sort of app, it is a little bit easier for them to reach out for that help. In those, assessing that level of risk that someone may be at, when you can ask those questions, and those questions will be on the follow-up stuff that we send, but it's questions like, you know, does your abusive partner say, you know, that no one else would love you if you tried to leave, or, you know, have you changed your activity to avoid upsetting them? You know, some of them are very simple questions, and then some of them are much more the high level of risk, like, do they have a weapon in the home? Have they tried to physically harm you before? Do they threaten self-harm if someone as a way of controlling? So those are things to be aware of, what those questions are, and being able to use those questions. I would say the biggest thing is you want to have that level of trust already established. You wouldn't just want to start asking questions like that of someone who you maybe haven't had much interaction with before, because they may see it as a threat. They may see it as, this puts me in more danger. I'm not going to share this information with you. I'm not ready to share this information with someone. So creating that level of trust, establishing that first and foremost is important. Some do's and don'ts, obviously some basic do's and don'ts that we like to let people know is, you know, I think one of the hardest things for someone who is on the outside looking in to know and understand is, why don't you just leave? Why would you continue to be a part of this? You know, it's not easy to walk away, and there are so many things that are keeping someone stuck in with their partner. Now it's even harder because, okay, so it's not safe for me in my home anymore, but if I walk out the door and I go to a shelter or I go stay with someone else, am I putting myself at risk to get sick? Am I putting my kids at risk to, get sick? And that's a real fear. And so now it's even harder. All of these other barriers are there before, and now it's even harder for someone to leave, because there is this fear of the unknown of what will happen if we leave our home, which is maybe safe in a health point of view, but is not safe in a our physical and emotional health, because their partner is abusive. So approaching a suspected victim without their abusive partner, you wouldn't want to say something in front of their partner. And then encourage couples counseling. Couples counseling right now is probably a little bit harder anyways, because how we're addressing our mental health. Telehealth has proven to be some different challenges for people. So how are they doing that in a way that's still healthy for the client who is experiencing it? But if someone needs that support of mental health, I would encourage it to be separate. You get some help here, you get some help here during this time, and then maybe, when things are back to some sort of new normal, that might be something down the line. But initially, that's not something you'd want to do together. I would say do listen without passing judgment. It is important. Like we want to say to someone, you don't have to stand around. You don't have to take this. You should leave. Or we have a tendency to see the negative in their partner, but focus on the behavior, not their partner. And then communicate privately, and then offer support for safety planning. They already are doing a lot of stuff to keep themselves safe. Some of it they may not even know or recognize. And so offering that safety, whether it's just a word, a signal that they can give a neighbor, a word that they can text someone that doesn't, need an explanation, but it knows that allows them to know that I'm watching out for you. I understand things might escalate, so I'm going to check in and make sure everything's okay. So this abuser accountability, this is kind of hard, especially if you are not connecting with the person in person. This adds another challenge. But I would say it might provide a different type of opportunity to reach out to the abusive person. We're becoming more savvy at connecting digitally, so maybe this would be an opportunity for someone who is in that pastoral or care role to reach out, like, hey, everybody's reaching out right now, so hey, I'm just going to reach out. This person might not be suspicious of it, me reaching out to them, because everybody's reaching out socially, digitally, to connect with people. So it might be an opportune time to reach out to that person just to kind of get a feel about what's going on. And it might mean, just starting a conversation with that person, and then you can kind of get more insight into what's happening. They're not likely going to say, oh yeah, so today I, was completely controlling of my spouse or my partner. They're not going to say that. But when you get an insight into something that may be causing a higher level of stress in the home, then you can kind of address that issue, which hopefully will subside maybe the intense abuse may be happening in the home. We kind of talked about some of these challenges already, of what it might be, how it might be harder to connect with people. But this is where we have to rely on our entire church body to be the hands and feet and to be the eyes. Where we would normally have people connecting, we're now left to do that on a different level. Same thing for children who are maybe in these homes. Teachers are, checking on their kids, day to day in the classroom, but now they're not in the classroom. So that provides another challenge for children as well who are being exposed to violence in the home. So how do we have to be diligent, and we have to have it on the forefront of our mind to check in with people, to be the eyes and ears in different ways that we wouldn't normally be the eyes and ears. And then anyone who you may have been counseling before, you know, we may have to get creative with how we continue to help and support them in those situations. And then also consider a message of safety at home during this time. Like, can you, from, you know, your platform of, you know, the pulpit or in a small group or anything like that, bring this up as a subject. You know, what does it mean to be sheltering at home safely? What does that look like for people? And what does it look like when it's not safe? So that people are aware that it's happening. I mean, not everybody is even aware that it's an issue. So if they're not aware that's an issue on your average day, are they going to be aware that it's an issue when someone's stuck at home with their abusive partner? Obviously, we are a resource here for Hendricks County, and we would highly encourage anyone who needs assistance helping someone or connecting someone with resources to call us. We're there to walk alongside anyone who may need that assistance. Connect to Help 211 is, you know, Central Indiana, any resources. That's a great resource just across the board, especially this time as they may need seeking out more additional resources. And then the Indiana State Coalition and then the National Domestic Violence Hotline is available as well for anyone who may need it. And that is all I have. So I'm not sure if I haven't really been watching as far as chat questions or if there is questions that you'd like to open up. Kevin, I'll kind of let you take it from here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Melissa, for sharing all that. And thanks everybody for your attention. I know several of you jumped in and shared some information and made some remarks during the chat, but I want to make sure that we've covered everything you asked about. There was one question about our Thursday support group, and I wanted to just make sure I addressed that. I was looking through the other comments from earlier, and I think we've covered everything else, but we definitely want to clarify if you have any questions. But we have a support group for survivors of domestic violence. It's called Embracing Empowerment, and that typically takes place on Thursdays. We have, I believe, been conducting that internally, although I might have actually be wrong about that. The case managers of our residents have probably just been working with residents one-on-one during this period of time. I know that that support group's open for people in the community under normal circumstances to attend, but it's not meeting right now with members of the community. So I think one of the things I'm going to approach our team about is seeing if we can offer that via Zoom. It just seems to make sense right now to be able to do that. So if there are folks in your congregations or in your sphere of influence who would benefit from gathering on a regular basis, on a weekly basis with others who've experienced similar things, then Embracing Empowerment would be the way to go. I know in my conversations with residents, almost to a person, they mention Embracing Empowerment as being a real touchstone for them, a real tipping point for them. So just want to make sure you have that information, and we can share a
Also,
link.
Kevin, I want to remind everyone too that someone doesn't have to be staying here at the shelter in order to take advantage of resources. If they need to talk to a case manager, they need to talk to an advocate, we're available to take those calls. They don't have to be living in shelter to receive those services. So those services are available as well.
Absolutely. So any questions or comments from you all? I want to make sure we address it.
I guess a more practical question, is the shelter taking in new families right now, or is it closed because, you know, the health concern? How you working?
Yeah, that's a good question, Riley. We actually are able to take new residents right now because of the COVID outbreak and everything. We're able to take residents in higher lethality situations than typical right now. Although we are providing services for people who are not in extremely lethal or dangerous situations, we're still providing care, case management, safety planning services for them. We're just a little bit more restrictive on who we can allow in the shelter right now. And that's purely just for protection of the residents that are there. We are actually working with some other organizations to provide shelter for folks who may have been exposed to COVID I know there's some hotels and other organizations around that are helping with that. But yeah, right now we are still open, just a little bit more restrictive than normal. That's a great question. Any others? Feel free to jump right in.
Can I make a quick comment?
Yeah, Brenda, go ahead.
Since I take calls and emails from victims through the church website a lot, I think especially if any of these new pastors are new to this, my just a comment would be that it can be extremely shocking when you hear some victims come forth with who it is. They could be elders in your church. They could be very upstanding citizens that on the outside everybody thinks are perfect. This is the perfect couple because I've had many of those calls and met with them individually. And unfortunately, sometimes they've come from other churches, and I don't mean just to our church, it happens all over, because their church didn't believe them and were sided with the abuser. It's a very difficult line to walk on who to believe. But I would just encourage you to listen and not make quick judgments, because it's very easy to do. Oh no, he could never be that, or she could never be that, because it happens both ways. So over the years, I have been shocked, and I've seen pastors be shocked when it came to be truth. So I just be really careful with that.
Yeah, Brenda, that's an excellent point. You know, we talk about the proverbial wolf in sheep's clothing, and that really comes from the scripture that we talked about earlier today. It is domestic abuse doesn't discriminate, and one of the tactics, or all the tactics really together, that an abuser might use really can position them as some of the most kind and outgoing, gregarious,
Absolutely.
godly people that we might know. And so we have to be really wise as we look and listen. So that was a great point.
And in the resources that we'll follow up today with, there's a little bit more information in there about abusive behaviors, like what the abuser may, things that you may be able to recognize in an abusive person, and then how to hold that abuser accountable. And then as well as not just in the information we'll receive to follow up, but when we are able to do a more in-depth training with church leadership, that's one of the areas that we can expand on, is that accountability for abusers, especially if it is someone in the church.
Right. Absolutely. We act immediately to care for a victim, but we also, over the long haul, want to the extent that they're willing, to minister to people who are abusers, to restore them, just like the Bible might teach through church discipline, or I know you may come from different backgrounds that practice that in different ways, but that's the goal, is restoration and healing. But we awfully want to always act first to protect the victim and his or her children. That's the first priority, and then we work on putting pieces back together. We're right at 12:30. I don't want to cut off any other questions or good discussion, but I also don't want to presume that everybody just wants to hang on here for the rest of the day. So let me close with a word of prayer and just some encouragement for you guys. And then if you want to hang on afterwards, Melissa, I'm assuming you've got a few more minutes. We'd love to stick around and chat and make sure all your questions get answered. But we're grateful for you joining us today, for your wisdom, for the organizations you lead. And we'll be sure to follow up with more info. Please reach out to us, though, if you need anything along the way. Let me pray. God, thanks so much for this group of folks, the dedication that they demonstrate day after day, week after week, to the organizations, the churches they serve. I pray that today has been helpful, at least to stir some thoughts, to provide a little bit more insight and information. And I pray ultimately that anyone who's being victimized, who's in the sphere of influence of these men and women, that they would receive the care they need in a more complete, in a more thorough way, and in a more godly and caring and compassionate way than might have been the case before we had this conversation. Father, I pray that you continue to be the protector and provider and healer that we trust you to be. Thank you for this day and all that is about to come. Pray that we'll be faithful to you and serve you well. We love you. Thank you for your son, Christ. In his name we pray. Amen. As we conclude, I want to make sure that you all know, and we'll put this in the email, but our helpline is for anyone who needs any help of any shape or form. If questions, concerns, if they're seeking shelter, have them call 317-745-1496. That's our emergency helpline, but it's there for anybody 24/7. So thank you all for joining us. Like I said, we'll hang on for just a few more minutes. Otherwise, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Anybody else hanging out have any other questions they want to address?
Thank you.
Oh, thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for joining us.
Tell all my friends at the shelter I said hi.
We will.
We will.
Thanks, Brenda.
Thanks. Bye.
All right. Sean, how are you? Oh, he's out.
Oh.
Thanks for joining us.
Looks like it's
Think-
frozen.
Yeah, possibly. Hi there. Do you have any other questions or anything?
No, thanks.
Okay.
Good.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much
Yes.
for joining us.
Thank you for the session. It was really informative.
Thanks. Have a great day.
Okay,
Thank
same
you.
to you. God bless.
All right. Hey, Melissa, that was awesome.
Hey.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Hey,
Yeah.
that last woman that was on, she is joining us from Trinidad.
Oh my goodness.
I know. I think she found us
Wow.
on Eventbrite too. So we had
Yeah.
Pennsylvania, New York, Minnesota, Trinidad, and Indiana.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it works. It was good. What do you
I
think?
mean, expanding our reach for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.